Welcome to Wadsworth History on Film, a program presented by the Wadsworth Area Historical Society and designed to record the oral history of Wadsworth for posterity. I'm Cesar Carino, your host, and our guests today are Bob and Loa Gerberich. Bob, the reason we have you here is that you're somewhat of an anomaly, and that means that although you might be over 20 years of age, I understand that you have a 20-year-old body.
That's correct.
20-year-old body, and just chronologically, how many years has that 20-year-old body been around?
My 20-year-old body's been around 60 years.
60 years, but
Yes.
a 20-year-old body.
But I remained, my physical condition is like a 20-year-old.
20-year-old person,
Yes.
That's wonderful. And what about this good wife of yours? I mean, we aren't going to ask her age, although
No.
everyone knows about it, because how many times have you been on television to tell about your age, Loa?
Not too many.
Not too many times. Loa is the reason we are interviewing you, Bob. You're not old enough yet to be on the program because you have to be 65 or above, but we're interviewing you because you are the one person in Wadsworth who has won more motorcycle races than any other person ever in the history of Wadsworth. And Loa, you bring a dimension of history that is unique, and that is the fact that you were the first woman to be a legislator on Wadsworth City Council. And we're really pleased with that kind of a combination, one that you would never understand. It's almost as bad as mine. I was a university dean, and my hobby is driving tractors. So we have two different branches of people here, and let's start with Bob. And are you sensitive about your age, Bob?
Yes, I am sensitive about the 60-year-old part of it, yes. Because I'm really not that old.
That's right. Tell us when that 60-year-old was born.
April 11th, 1937.
1937.
Here in Wadsworth.
And it stopped growing, aging on April 11th, 1947. Is that
That's
right?
correct, yes.
But your chronological age has continued to grow.
Yes.
And who are your parents and your relatives and all of that?
Oh, okay. My parents were Ora and Margaret Gerberich. My dad worked at the old Wadsworth Foundry for 20 years, and then discontinued that, quit there, and started farming in 1943.
Where did he farm?
And in Seville, out of Seville, on County Road 41 or Guilford Road.
Guilford Road.
Yes.
Which is still, you might say, Wadsworth, isn't it?
Yes. Well, it was. It's a couple miles from the Wadsworth Township line. Yeah. Close to Medina Township.
Mother Margaret was who?
Mom was born in Nebraska, in a little town called Baird, Nebraska.
Baird. Spell Baird for us.
B-Y-A-R-D.
B-Y-A-R-D. Baird.
Yeah.
Nebraska.
Nebraska.
And her maiden name was what?
Cruz.
Cruz. C-R-E-W-S?
K-R-U-S-E.
K-R-U-S-E.
Yeah.
We have to do this so that 50 years from now, people may not know who you are and won't be able to find out. So we have all of this now on tape, and historically, we'll be able to perpetuate this for, well, forever, I guess, because the tape will never wear out. And what about brothers and sisters?
Okay, I have no brothers or sisters. I was the only child.
You're the only child?
Yes.
And as an only child, then you got all the attention, is that right?
Yes, I got complete attention.
And when did you get your first motorcycle?
My first motorcycle when I was 14 years old.
14 years old.
Yes.
We're going to talk about your motorcycle pretty soon, but before we do that, let's find out where you went to school and all of those kinds of things.
Okay, I went to school in Seville, the old Seville school, which was 12 grades at that time.
And it was a Seville High School at that
Seville
time
High
as well.
School and Seville Grade
And
School.
you remember the
both.
principal there?
Yes, Leland Detro.
Leland Detro, D-E-T-R-O.
Yes.
Right, Leland, L-E-L-A-N-D,
Yes.
Detro. And do you remember anything specific about the school that provided you the opportunity to do what you did in life?
Okay, yes. I was always interested in automobiles and racing. That's my main thing. And the biggest thing was, of course, we had industrial arts, and everybody always looked at me as working on their vehicles and doing anything with automobiles and motors.
And when did you become interested in automobiles and motors?
When I was 4 years old.
4 years old?
Yes.
No kidding, that's wonderful. And what did you do? I mean, what kinds of things did you do to elevate that to the profession that you now have?
Okay, one of the first thing I did was take a hammer to alarm clocks when I was 4 years old.
And did you break the alarm clock?
Break the alarm clocks with a hammer, yeah.
And did you fix it?
No, that was the start. And the second thing that I remember is my uncle had a welder, and when we went to my mother's brother-in-law, and we went to their house for twice a year. We usually had a a cruise outing, and he taught me how to weld, and that always, I never forgot that.
And how old were you then?
I was I was about 8 or 9 years old
And
then.
he taught you how to weld?
Yes.
That's wonderful. You know.
Yes.
And when did you start working on cars for real?
For real.
Without hammers and alarm
Okay.
clocks?
Yeah, I started when I was 15 with Sam Barton.
Sam Barton. And
Yeah.
where was that at the time?
That was in the school administration building, which is a school,
The administration building at the present time.
yeah, that sits in front of the Isham.
Okay, so that we have a geographical location of it, it is west of Isham School, east of Isham
East,
School.
yeah.
Immediately across the drive and on College Street.
Right.
And at that time, the name of the place was?
Roarin' Barton.
Roarin' Barton. And who was the Barton person?
That was Sam.
Sam
That was
Barton.
Sam Barton, yeah.
And tell us a little bit about Sam Barton before we go too much farther, because you were a very close friend of his, and I
Yes.
believe that you were with him almost when he died.
Yes, I was when he died.
And how old was he when he died?
He was 101.
101 years old. And was
Yes.
he physically capable up until that time?
Yes, he lived by himself, still had his driver's license. We got his driver's license renewed when he was 99. And just a couple days before he passed away, he drove the car out to the shop.
And what happened to him? What caused him to pass away?
He tripped on the step at the convenient mart as we were going in to get him some bananas. We had been to put on a senior citizens travel program, Loa and I, and he went with us. And he really entertained the old people that day.
I would imagine he would. For 101 years old, he could still run, as I remember. Is that correct?
Oh yes, he could still run.
Still run, and he was very active and very agile.
Yes.
And he had disease earlier and thought he was going to die many years
Yeah.
before.
Yes.
What was that?
He had cancer in his leg, and they operated on it twice. The first time it came right back, so the second time they operated, they told him they wanted to take his leg off. And he said, no, you do what you got to do, Doc, and I'll take care of the rest.
Okay.
And believe it or not, he took Laetrile,
And it worked?
and it worked.
From Mexico?
From Mexico,
Laetrile.
yeah. He got it directly from there. The people came to the house, and he paid them in cash, and he took the stuff, and
And he lived to be 101.
101.
That's a real story.
Yeah, it is.
And he died then as a result of the fall?
He fell, and the doctor had told me that his veins were just, there was nothing left of him, that anything, a bump or anything could take him. And
Now, you began working there when you were 15 years of
15 years
age,
old.
and did Sam then teach you
Yes.
auto mechanics?
yes, he took me to all of the seminars, the demonstrations, everything.
All of the automotive schools?
Automotive schools, everything. One of the highlights of that was a correspondence school with the Carter Carburetor Company, where one night a week we met uptown where the marathon station is with Hank, your brother.
My brother Hank?
Yeah, and
Was
he
he
taught the
teaching it at
school.
the time? He
Yeah.
was teaching it?
It was the first school he ever had. Then one night I got together with Sam at his place, and we took the carburetors apart, learned the fundamentals of them, and then they sent them back to the factory and checked them. And then we graduated from this school. But Sam took me right under his wing and took me everywhere and showed me everything.
Well, you surely would have a lot of things to do now if you had some older cars, but cars no longer have carburetors, is
No,
that right?
right,
They
carburetors
have
are
fuel
gone.
injection. Now, hold on to some of your thoughts there for a second, because we don't want Loa to get away here. Though we have some of the same types of questions, but we're going to skip the age part. We aren't going to hit the age part, but we do have a lot of the questions about where you were born, excuse me, who your parents are, and brothers and sisters, and where you went to school and all of that.
Okay. I was born in Barberton, and my dad was from Wadsworth. His name was Francis Clace, K-L-A-S-E.
K-L-A-S-E, Francis A-I-F-R-A-N-C-I-S,
Yes.
Clace, K-L-A-S-E, okay.
And they lived on Beck Street.
Mom's name is
Alice Larison, and of course she came from Nelsonville, Ohio.
Alice Larison, L-A-R-R-I-S-O-N, from Nelsonville, Ohio, and they got married and you were born.
That's
Sisters
right.
or brothers?
I have two brothers that came. I was before World War II, and they came after World War II when my dad got back from the Navy.
After your dad got back from the
So I
Navy.
have one that we nicknamed Skip, who is 50 years old, and then I have one David, who is 49 years
Now
old.
then, Bob, is this correct? If she has two younger brothers, one is 50 and one is 49, that she's older than 50, is that correct?
Yes, yes, she's older than 50.
That's older than 50. And you have such well, for the want of a better name, but a better word, such a variety of experiences that you've had in your lifetime. All of them have been interesting, all of them have been professional, and all of them have been contributory. What was the first thing that you did when you finally got out of, well, I shouldn't say finally got out of school. When you got out of high school, what did you do?
When I went right off to college, my folks moved to Massillon from Norton, where I graduated, and then I went off to college to Muskingum. And while I was there, I decided that I wanted to go into politics, and they were channeling me along to go into Washington, D.C. and help a representative. When
Who was it that
I can't even remember who it was at that time. Oh goodness, that's too far back.
Too far
That
back.
shows my age again. Mm-hmm.
Past 50.
Yes, and then that summer of my junior year, between my junior and senior year, I went to a stock car race with a cousin named Roberta Kelly, who was Roberta Morrison at that time.
And from Wadsworth.
From Wadsworth.
And I know, I didn't realize that Roberta Morrison was your cousin. And we'll hear all about those relatives in a few minutes too. We have a lot of those relatives around.
Right. And she introduced me to this young stock car driver, and he had the most beautiful blue eyes I've ever seen in my life.
And that took him, huh?
And
he was 20 years old at the time,
right.
wasn't he? Regardless how old he was 20 years old.
That's
So
right.
I became a history teacher very fast so I could teach in the Wadsworth area.
And that's exactly what you did. And you chased him until he caught you, is
That's
that right?
exactly right.
Lois, you began teaching when in Wadsworth?
I taught in 1960. Our first baby we were married in 58, first baby born in 59, and I went off to teach here
So
in
you've been
Wadsworth
married
in
now
1960.
for a good 37 years.
Oh, my goodness,
Is that right?
yes. Yes, 39 years.
39 years,
Yes.
I'm sorry, yeah, 39 years. You were married 58.
Yes.
That's right, 39 years. I was thinking through 59. 39 years you've been married. And during that period of time, you have done things other than teaching. And we're going to get a little bit more detail about those kinds of things. But when did you start politics, and when did you become the first woman ever in the history of Wadsworth to be a legislator?
In 1976, I started my first term, and I got there by way of my husband. He had ran, and he tells me he lost. But I had to be
He
behind
just
him.
didn't win. He didn't
No, I
lose.
didn't win. I didn't lose.
He
No,
didn't lose.
Okay.
I just didn't win.
And the
I mean,
next,
it's like a beauty contest. The girl who
right.
comes in second doesn't lose. She
No,
just didn't win.
didn't win,
She's
that's
still
right.
beautiful.
and he was running against my principal at the time. And,
Who was?
Mr. Oh gosh, I can't remember. And he's
lived
a
on
dear
West Street.
friend. Yeah.
Your principal?
Lived on
Started-
West Street.
Okay, play a guessing game. Started with H. All I can think of.
H.
H? No.
Yeah.
What school was it in?
Holmes.
Oh,
Mr.
Holmes.
Holmes.
Yeah,
Dick
Dick
Holmes.
Holmes.
Yeah.
Oh, I was thinking of Dick as being the superintendent, but he was the principal at the
yeah,
time.
at that
Okay.
time he was
Yeah.
principal. Boy,
Dick
thank
Holmes.
God for this 20-year-old mind that can pull
Yeah.
it out. And it became kind of a fun thing, and I said, well, you know, I would really like to do that sometime. And it was like God heard me, because then John Hanna called the next election and said, would you try it in 1975?
And John Hanna was at that time what?
He was only on council.
He was
at that
he was
time.
on council. I was the mayor. And in 1975, he asked you to do that. In
Yes.
1976, then you became the first
Yes.
woman. How many years had Wadsworth been in existence since that time?
Oh.
1814 to 1976.
Yes.
1814. Wow.
Well
In the
over
city in the
150
night.
years.
Yeah.
That's something. Now then, we have many people on council who are females, do we not?
Yes, we sure
And
do.
we have had many since then. Well, I shouldn't say many. We've had some since then. But is the council now composed of more women than men?
Yes, it is. It's pretty exciting.
And you started that. You started that whole ball rolling.
I would like to. That was nice.
It's a good thing that you're not a certain group of people in this world that Wadsworth is not like a certain group of people in this world who, if women become involved, that everyone else quits. And that's wrong. Because I think that the women have brought a real dimension to the council floor. Tell us about your teaching experience. You've had some experiences in teaching which went far beyond the classroom. What were they?
At first, I started just with ordinary classrooms in the middle school. It would have been 7th and 8th graders. And then I dropped out to have children. And as I came back in the back door, so to speak, and as a substitute. And then as to what they had was called the alternative school.
Which was what?
And that was for children from the 8th grade through 12th grade who had very difficult behavior problems, and so they were ousted from school, but then given a second chance to come to this alternative school, which at that time meant in where the Senior Citizen Center is now. And I remember my husband saying, as he looked across from the bank one day, "You don't have a headband on, but don't you think those kids are a little rough to be teaching?" And I laughed and I said, "No, as long as you can tell the coach from the players, we're doing okay over there."
That's right.
Okay.
And you did a fine job. As a matter of fact, you initiated that program, did you
Yes,
not?
yes.
You initiated the program. So you've had two programs that you've initiated. One, Getting Women in Council, and two, the Alternative School, which has helped hundreds and hundreds of kids. You may not know this. When I was at the university, I had some of the students that you had put through the alternative program.
Oh, I didn't
And,
know.
oh yes, and I can't say the names obviously
Right.
on the air, but these people came there and they still, one boy particularly, scared me to death when he walked in. He had a knife in his boot.
Mm-hmm.
And he had, I'm sure he was, well, I shouldn't say I'm sure. I feel reasonably sure that he was on drugs that he came in to see me. And he told me that he had been urged by his teacher to start a university program. And I said, "Who was your teacher?" He said, "Well, Mrs. Gerberich." I thought, wow, that's great. I didn't realize that anyone could get to people like this person. A knife, a big knife in his boot, a big knife in his boot, not a little one, big knife in his boot. And turned out that after we began working with him and so forth, he became a very good friend, and he never finished college, but at least he has a couple, 3, 4 years behind him, all because of you, and I'm sure that there are others as well. I heard that magic word a little while ago. I dropped out to have some children. Bob, I'd ask you who your children are, but you probably would forget their names because 20-year-olds don't really become too terribly involved with small children. So how about asking Loa if you can tell us about your children, and tell us what one of your children particularly, well, both of them. Both have been very interesting, but the one has a unique background also, taking after mother, doing things that no one else has ever done. Tell us about your two girls.
Well, I have one who's 39,
And her name
almost, and that she's 38 actually. Don't make her too old here.
And now you're over 50 though.
And
so
I'm over 50,
that's
right.
right.
I do admit to that.
Right.
Her name is Linda.
Linda
And
Gerberich.
Linda graduated
That's
here.
Linda, right? Linda Gerberich.
From Wadsworth, and she had such a good education here in Wadsworth. In about the 8th grade, she wrote an essay on the Peace Corps. And she told me, "Someday I'm going to do that, Mom." And then all the way through school, with particularly such nice teachers that taught her kindness and awareness of other people in the world.
Now, you and Bob did not teach her kindness and awareness, right?
Well, I think they
I
reinforced
did.
whatever we started.
Bob, you taught him kindness?
Yeah.
And she went off to the Peace Corps as soon as she graduated from
And
Miami.
where did she go?
She went to Miami, and then she went to the Philippines.
Philippines. And how long
And
was she at the Philippines?
And she was in there 2 years.
And then where did she go from the Philippines?
From Philippines to Pittsburgh.
Then from Pittsburgh
to Brazil.
Brazil.
Right.
And
Now to Washington, D.C.
Washington, D.C. And what is she doing presently?
She's a school counselor, and she works on the outskirts of Washington, D.C. in Fairfax County, which is one of the largest, and also with some of the most troubled youngsters in that area.
I'm very familiar with Fairfax County. I spent some time down there when I was at the university. And Fairfax County, Virginia, is just a little bit less frightening than being in the jungle alone at night.
Right.
Very bad. And she's out there doing that.
And she's out
it's
there
a
doing that.
tremendous opportunity for doing good in this world, and she'll do good. She'll do good work. And what about your younger daughter,
And Susan is 31, and she's married to Todd Hamblin.
Tom Hamlin?
And they have 2 children, of course, the lights of my life, and that is Joshua, who's 7, and John, who's 4. And Susan teaches at Valley View in the 3rd grade. This is her 10th year in the 3rd grade.
Now, is she a kind person too, Bob?
Yeah, oh,
You
yes.
taught her kindness?
I taught her all the kindness.
All
yeah.
the kindness, that's right. Now, we're going to get to these kids. We're going to get to the other parts of your life. But right now, Bob, how about giving us a little bit of a rundown on your day job? We know that you get on a motorcycle and you drive all over the country and all over the United States and all over, I mean, when I say the country, I'm talking about North and South, North America, all the way to Canada, Alaska, and everywhere else. But what
Yes.
about your day job? I mean, you don't make any money on those things particularly. do
No,
you?
no. I have Wadsworth Transmission. I've been in business 41 years. I started as a result of Sam Barton's teachings when I was 19 years old. And I still work my usual 12 hours a day. I'm now down to 5 days a week. Saturdays I prepare my motorcycles for the next race. And I started to repairing automatic transmissions in 1958. I seen the need for it, so I went to some schools, took some schooling on that through General Motors, Chrysler, and Ford, and then started repairing transmissions, and that's what I've done ever since.
Since 19.
I started in business in 1956.
1956.
And 1958.
And were you always at the same location?
Yes.
And tell us where that location is geographically.
It's 772 College Street, and it's just beyond the entrance, the Wadsworth Road that goes to the Wadsworth Rittman Hospital.
Okay, just beyond the road that goes to the Wadsworth Rittman Hospital, or Wadsworth Road.
Yes. Uh-huh.
And it's not on the corner there, it's the second building down, is that correct?
Second building on the right.
And since you aren't working, well, of course, 12 hours a day is only half time, because there are 24 hours in a day.
Yes, right, yeah.
Since you're not working full time anymore, who runs the place?
My son-in-law, Todd Hamblin, who I will eventually pass the business down to him.
And now Todd Hamblin, how did he happen to come to Wadsworth? Where's he from?
His dad was transferred into town here, got a job with the old Ohio Match Company. And they came into Wadsworth, and they eventually moved right across the street from us on West Street. And so that's how he met Susan.
I would say that'd be a pretty good place.
Yeah.
I met the neighbor girl.
Yeah, I met the neighbor girl,
her.
married the neighbor girl, and he's been with us now for 10 years.
That's wonderful.
Yes.
Now, Todd was what? He went to the service, right?
Yes, he was in the Army.
And tell us a little bit. I'm going to have Loa tell this because you probably will mess it up, Bob. So I'll ask
Okay.
Loa to tell you this.
Yes.
Tell us about the wedding and what that wedding produced in Wadsworth.
Oh, the wedding, of course, was beautiful. The thing that is my favorite story is not the wedding, it's the fact that the boy across the street used to come over for cookies and never paid much attention to my daughter. And then when he went away to the Army and was in Germany, he started writing letters to her.
And that was the boy
And
that
that
he
was-
married her.
And then he
That's
came home and married her.
a beautiful story.
Yeah.
What else did that wedding produce beside this beautiful family now of 2 children, your grandchildren?
Oh, of course it brought Todd into our business.
Todd brought it. How about having brought? Who was his best man?
Oh, that's for sure. Get that part of the story in.
That's right.
At the wedding, Todd had a friend in the Army by the name of Ken Pell, and he brought him here for the wedding and introduced him to a lovely lady by the name of Felicia Carino.
Who was the maid of honor, or not?
Yes.
She was the maid of
Yes.
honor
Yes.
for Susan.
For Susan. Right.
And the 2 of them were paired up at the wedding, right?
Yes.
Yes.
And now they're paired up for life.
Now
because
they're paired up for
they
life.
married.
That was really a wonderful sideline.
That was, we got 2 for 1 on that one.
2 for 1 on that deal, right?
Bob, tell us a little bit about driving motorcycles. Now, you got your first motorcycle when you were 14 years old, and you're not the typical dirty fingernail,
No.
terminal acne kind of person.
No.
You're a very refined person, and many of our good friends who are motorcyclists, that I think that the motorcyclists have really got a bad rap, and
Oh, yeah.
they're such good
Yeah.
people. So many of them are good people, and I don't mean to be even suggesting about the dirty fingernails, except that that's the way they are always portrayed, and they are.
Yeah, right. Yes.
They're good people, and they're intelligent people. As a matter of fact, I have 3 or 4 friends who are college professors who are motorcycle riders.
Yes.
And so it's not really that kind of now
No.
people will say, well, what about those ones that look so scuzzy? Well, have you ever looked in a car and seen people driving a car down?
Yeah.
And a lot of those people are scuzzy too.
Oh, yeah.
So we're not talking about those kinds. 14 years old, new motorcycle. What did you do with it, and how did you become involved with this love affair?
Oh, okay. Well, I'm always interested in engines, and of course I started off with a motorbike because at the time you had to have a driver's license, of course, when you were 16. And I started riding motorbikes first. I would buy one and the parts and fix it up and get it running, and I would ride that. And then I was working at Coppice Clay Products, loading trucks, drain tile on trucks after school.
And Coppice Clay Products was west of town.
Yes, it's in Seville. It was 2 miles away from where I lived.
Right.
And one of the fellows there had a 1941 Harley, and he was going to sell it, and so I just had to have that. So I ended up buying that and rode that, and I was 14 years old and rode it till I was 16. And then I'd gotten this job with Sam Barton when I was 15, the summer I was out of school. So I rode it to work there, and of course then I had to have a car, so I traded the motorcycle for the car. And I got that at off of Jim Rich at the time, because Jim took my motorcycle in trade. And then I went to work for Sam, and I had motor scooters then and motorbikes. And then I went into business for myself, and then I had to give up this. I met Loa at the racetrack at Barberton Speedway. And this was going to be the thing. I had to give that up in order to be in business, because it's when I had that race car and racing thing setting around the business, I had a tendency to pay attention to that and not to business. So I got rid of everything. We got married, and then here when I turned 52, well, Loa said that we should buy a motorcycle and start traveling on that. She became interested in it.
No, when your body was not 50.
Oh, wait a minute now. No, I was
Your body was
20
still-
years old.
You're
Yeah.
20 years old, and
Yeah.
and chronologically you turned 52.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we started riding motorcycles, and then Loa, of course, our plans were that when we retired we were going to start racing again, only we were going to race a sprint car, which is an open wheel type racing car, similar to what they race at Indianapolis. But we were just going to pack things up and race around the country at different tracks. And we got on this motorcycle, and so she got me a professional motorcycle riding school at Mid-Ohio, where I took the lessons, and this gave me a road racing license. Well, there's no way that we could ever race on Daytona Speedway with a car because of the cost, but I could with the motorcycle. So I told her, I says, we're going to start out at Daytona. So that's what we did. We started, our first race was in Daytona on the big speedway on the motorcycle.
And this was in Florida.
In Florida, yeah.
And when was that?
That was 13 years ago. Or no, 10 years ago.
10 years ago.
Yeah.
When you were when you're chronologically 50 years of age.
Yeah.
Now, were you the oldest one there?
Yes. Yes.
And,
at that time I was. Yes.
And how did you make out?
Well, I'll never forget this. We had to push the motorcycle out to the starting line on the speedway, and I'd never been that close to Daytona Speedway. And Loa, I had a pass for her, so we got out there and we're standing there, and she says, "Oh my gosh," she says, "do you realize what we've gotten ourselves into here?" And I says, "Whatever you do." I said, "Don't act nervous." I was shaking so bad I could hardly hang on. So we got on the bike, and the way I went, and it was the biggest thrill that I've ever had in my life. The first couple times around that speedway, the banking is 33 degrees, and I went around a couple times, and I thought, well, I came here to race, and I said, I got to go on this banking. And when I went on the banking, I thought I was going to fall off, but we made it.
And did you win?
No, but I couldn't win. I knew nothing about how to building these engines and whatnot, but we finished. But that's what started it, and we've built bigger engines since, and this year now we finished fourth in the nation in the point standing.
Fourth in the nation.
Yep.
Wow. And where was that?
That was at Road Atlanta. We finished up this year.
Was that a track too?
Yes, that's a road racing track, where meaning that it's not an oval. It's 2 miles around the track, and you go up and down the hill and around the banking. It's a professional racetrack. Wow. Yeah.
Now, Loa, do you ever ride these motorcycles?
I ride on behind. That's the only time I get to tell him where to go.
Was that?
It's when I'm behind him.
Now, have you ever driven a motorcycle, Loa?
I tried to learn to ride, and I ran into an airplane hangar. And he decided at that point, some of us are not meant to be on the road.
An airplane hangar? You mean one of those great big garages that holds a full airplane?
One of those great big corrugated aluminum garages.
That holds
yes.
an airplane?
Yes, I left my shoulder imprint and had to apologize to the man next door for wrecking his hangar.
Wow. Bob, what would impel you, I guess, to want to race at age 50?
Well, I have the need for speed, and not
speed.
the pills, and so it's just the thing that I had. It was my whole life. I'm sorry that I missed the calling now, because when I was racing before with the hot rods and whatnot, I should have kept with it, because I wanted to end up racing at Indianapolis in the big cars, but of course I had to work, and there was just no way that I was too conservative.
Now, when you say that you would not have been able to afford racing cars, what kind of money are we talking about?
Well, this is hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Oh, hundreds of thousands of dollars.
I would have had to find sponsors, and at the time I had nothing back of me. I had never raced big cars or anything, just on some of the local tracks. And I had a chance one night in one of the tracks in southern Ohio to race a real fast car in a program, and my dad was with me, and we talked about it, and I just decided not to, and I guess that's where my career, I should have kept up with it.
Pretty well ended. Now, you have two girls who are very kind, and you taught them to be very kind.
Yes.
What do they think about their 60-year-old, chronologically 60-year-old father racing cars? Does it scare them?
Motorcycle? Oh, yeah,
motorcycle.
they both come to the races and watch me, but they both kind of look the other way, especially Susan. She just can't hardly stand it. But Linda, she can come right out and help me, and they're always cautioning me about being careful.
Now, how fast do you go on these tracks?
The motorcycle that I have is capable of 125 mile an hour on the straightaways.
On the straightaways?
It's a 500cc.
And you actually do 125 miles an hour?
Yes.
And you've gone 125 miles?
Oh, yes.
And how does it,
go ahead.
I'm sorry, how does it feel having the wind blow at you at 125 miles an hour when hurricanes can topple buildings at 80 to 90 miles an hour?
Well, in having the need for speed, this doesn't, 125 is really nothing. I mean, I don't have any ill feelings about it at all.
Well, do you have a windshield in front of you or anything?
No, just your helmet. Your helmet has a face shield over it is all.
And you sit straight up?
No, you tuck yourself in. In other words, you get as low as you can get so that you get the least wind resistance that you can get.
Now, we had Dan Wilson on the program not too terribly long ago, and Dan said that on the way back from Seville one night, he wanted to make sure that he had no resistance whatsoever, so he lay prostrate on the motorcycle.
Yes.
With his chest over the gas tank and his feet over the back fender, and did it that way. You don't ride that way, do you?
I did. I also took part in the Bonneville speed trials this year in Bonneville at the Salt Flats in Utah, and I did that way there, yes. Completely laid down with my feet straight out.
Well, how do you steer the motorcycle?
Well, you just hang on. You aim it. In other words, yeah, you just aim it and you hang on. You don't have to make any turns at all. You just go straight.
And how fast did you go with that?
114. I was disappointed with that, but the Salt Flats are like racing on a frozen lake. It's slushy. It's about an inch of slush. As the sun comes out, the moisture comes through the salt and it gets very slippery. And that's why they haven't broken any records there on the Salt Flats in a number of years, because the salt has deteriorated so much that...
And what we're talking about is a flat. The reason
it's completely flat. There is absolutely nothing. I mean,
nothing?
Nothing, no.
Now, who are people in the United States who race? I mean, are they young kids? Are they people your age? Is there anybody your age at all?
No. There's one man that we race with at Nelson Ledges that is 65, but he's raced all his life. And that's it. The rest of them are all younger than I am. All of them in the real competition are all younger than I am. I'm the oldest one.
And how do they treat you that you're the oldest one?
Well, the kids really respect me, and we just associate with them like we're we are one of them.
Well, you're 20 years old.
Yeah, we're 20 years old. We're right in the group. Yeah, we don't have any problems at all. The most interesting part is the people that come up to me that are my age and they don't know quite what to say. One of the incidents I had especially is we race up Pikes Peak in Colorado Springs, and this year we had to stay in the Summit House for 3 hours while they race cars, motorcycles, and everything. And the people come up in the Cog Railway, the sightseers, and they come in there, and there was two couples in there, and this one lady just kept kind of looking at me and on. So I finally went over to her, and she says, "How old are you?" Says you. And I says, well, I told her, I have a 20-year-old body.
So what did she say to that?
And she started, she just couldn't believe it. She had to get her husband over there and talk to me a little bit. And they just they couldn't believe it, that I was doing that type of thing. And
she probably thought you were hitting on her or something.
Yeah.
Now, when you say that you went up Pikes Peak, what do you mean? You actually went...
Raced up the mountain, yeah. That's another thing that when Loa and I got started racing that... I seen this advertised in a magazine that they were going to start racing motorcycles up Pikes Peak again. They had done away with it for a number of years because they killed a boy there one year. So
oh boy!
I got run over with another bike. So I sent the information in, and we we immediately entered it. And one of my racing idols, Wally Dallenbeck, had started this, and so he'd raced at Indianapolis, and he was starting this Pikes Peak thing again. So we entered it, and that was another one of the biggest thrills of my life, is to do that.
Now, how far up did you go on? How many miles or whatever?
Okay, it's 12.5 miles, and it's 156 turns, and you go from 9,000 to 14,000 feet. The first year I went out there, I didn't know anything about it, how to get the bike to run at the altitude or anything. And all the people that are entered are from west of the Mississippi. So my bike wouldn't even run at the top. And they said that they were going to let me run, but I might have to go up in the sweep truck. That's a truck that follows everybody at the end if I didn't make it on time. So I had to tell the guy that was driving the truck before we started, I said, hey, I says, just slow that truck down a little bit. I says, I got to finish this thing. So he did. And
well, the altitude would cause your...
yeah, the altitude, I lost all the power I had. I had nothing
but you
left.
didn't stop running completely.
No, but it would just slow way down. So from there, we learned how to make it run, and each year we've been improving. We've been doing that for 6 years now, and I run with them, but I haven't been able to beat them.
Now, how fast can you go up Pikes Peak?
You go the winner does it in less than 13 minutes in the 12.5 miles.
So you're going at least 60 miles an hour
Yes.
plus.
Yes.
But you're not going 125 miles an hour.
No. It's
But tell him you did it 17.
I did it in 17 minutes. Yeah.
Well, that's not bad at all.
No, I wasn't bad at all.
No. Now, 17 minutes to go straight up.
Yeah.
And what is the angle? I mean...
the degrees of the angle. It's pretty steep in places. I suppose some of this going up in certain places, it's probably 22 to 30 degrees, and you have sharp turns that you drop off. You can drop off into space. 5,000 feet.
Oh, mercies.
There's no guardrails.
Now, did you watch this, Loa?
I am lucky. I get altitude sickness, and so I have to stay at the starting line, which is 9,000 feet. I watch it on TV.
You watched it on TV?
I watch it on TV. They have a helicopter hovering over.
I was going to say they don't have any motorcycle with a TV camera.
And they show them at two places, one halfway and one at the top. And so if he's still running halfway, I figure he has a good chance to make it.
He has a good chance to make it.
And then they announce his number.
They do announce the speed in two places called the picnic grounds, which I went through there this year at 70 miles an hour. And then that's it's about 9,000 feet, and then at 11,000 feet they clock you again, and I went 70 mile an hour through there. That's a half a mile stretch of road. It's called it's the
Cove.
Glen Cove.
Glen Cove. Now, do they stop all traffic going up there?
Oh yeah. Everything is stopped for a day, the 4th of July, and they let the people in the mountain until 8 o'clock in the morning. Spectators get in. They line the whole mountain. People line up the whole road all the way from the bottom to the top, spectators.
That's thousands of people there.
Yes, thousands of people.
13 miles.
And these people are all cheering and waving. And this year I didn't do quite so good. It just seemed like I couldn't get enough traction. I practiced good, qualified good, but running, I started out and there's these people lined up all the way up the mountain, and I guess I got buck fever. I don't know. I just couldn't get going like I figured I could. So.
Now, are you ever frightened when you're on this motorcycle going 125 miles an hour?
No,
not at all.
No, it don't bother me the least bit. We've traveled together, Loa and I, on a street bike that we have across Nevada. One day we ran 100 mile an hour across Nevada all day long.
Loa, there's an organization that Bob belongs to, that you belong to as well. What's the name of it?
It's called the Iron Butt Association.
Yeah.
Now, why do we call it that?
It's called because they have to do 10,000 miles in 10 days at minimum in order to qualify for the race all around the United States.
And you've done that?
And no, I have followed along, but I've never been able to ride behind him. So I start at the start and then meet him at the end. And so that's as close to, because it's only allowed one up on the motorcycle.
No. Now, how do you go 10,000 miles in the United States? You go all the way around the perimeter of the United States?
Yes, it's like a scavenger hunt, and you start in a designated place. Where I started, the first time I did it was in Philadelphia, and the second time was in Reno, Nevada. And you start, and you don't know where you're going to go, what roads you're going to take until they start the clock. They hand you the maps, and you have what they call bonus legs, where you go. One of the things was from Santa Ana, California, you had a chance to go through Hawthorne, Nevada to get to Carson City, Nevada, or take Route 5 and go to the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco, and then back across the mountains in Reno and back to Carson City. And the way you do that to get the bonus points to win this thing. Well, in 1991, the last time I did it, I finished 5th out of 60 people. And I rode just about 12,000 miles in 10 days. Now, that's because of my young 20-year-old body, I can do these things.
That's
I take
right.
certain vitamins, and I've got myself programmed that I only need 4 hours of sleep, and sometimes I can even beat that. And you learn how to sleep on the motorcycle. You put it on the center stand and put your head right on the gas tank and go sound asleep. And
While it's traveling?
no, you stop. You stop, no. And this is the way you do this type of thing. And you completely circle the United States.
Now, what about the roads aren't closed for that, are they?
No.
So you have to go down the road.
Yes.
And now, you may not want to answer this question, Bob, but how many miles an hour do you go on a turnpike, for instance?
Well, you figure you average 50 mile an hour.
That's all?
Yeah, I never go over the speed limit when you're doing something like that.
Oh, you don't go over the speed limit? I see. Loa, tell us now then the truth.
Our mayor, John Hanna, said don't correct any of his stories, but he does. He has to go 80, 90, 100 miles an hour in order to average out that 50 with gas stops and everything.
Every now and then, I'm going down the street and a motorcycle goes whizzing by me. I suspect that it's probably someone who's on one of these scavenger hunts. Is that
Yeah, well, yeah, it's held every other year.
You know, we're going to run out of time, but we need to get some information from Loa. Loa, you started politics when you were, well, we aren't going to ask your age, but you started in 1976.
Right.
In 1976, there were no women. How were you accepted by the other council people at that time?
It was very difficult.
And what was your position at the time?
At the time, I was council for Ward 4.
And that was the ward that you live in, of
Yes,
course. And
right.
whom did you beat that year? Do you remember?
No, I don't remember that either.
Okay.
I'm sorry, but I know that I won that year by going door to door and with my one child who was 9 years old on the other side of the street helping me, and it was quite a campaign. But I think by introducing people that I really wanted the job, that helped.
And do you remember who was on council and how they treated you, and who was the mayor and who was the president of council and so forth at the time?
I had the mayor was delightful. He was also very encouraging to that, and that's J.D. Henson.
J.D. Henson.
Yes. But I also remember the safety director at that time was Roy Luther, and one of the other people on council was Tom Cox, and they used to tell me that I better stay home with the babies because they were going to not do well without Mom being there. That it was the worst thing I could do was to leave them at night and be on city council.
Well, they turned out well, and Tom's, as you and I both know, Tom is one of our best friends.
Yes, he is.
And one of your best friends,
Yes.
and certainly.
Just delightful. But at those first times,
Yeah.
I did get
Who were
the
some of the other
warning.
people on council at the time?
John Hanna was on council. Let's see.
You'd probably council at large at the time?
Yes. And you had just been on council.
I just got
think
off council.
Just had gotten off.
I was off on
Yeah.
council for 2 terms, and then the university would let me be on it. Well, they didn't say that I couldn't, but I suspected that it would have been very embarrassing because there had been a lot of complaints about the fact that several people were getting into politics, and the university needed to be apolitical if they possibly could. So I withdrew, I should say voluntarily, but I have missed it ever since, and one of these days I'd like to go back. And what about the people? How did they react when they called the councilwoman instead of the councilman? And
There
so-
was never any, I don't think, any difference there. They just needed help. They needed someone to listen to them and represent their views. And so I don't think there was any hesitation. In fact, probably, I think I got more calls because they didn't mind calling in the evening after I got home from school. They didn't mind calling weekends, Sundays. It seemed like they thought I would be accessible because I had a family.
Right. Now then, you were teaching at the time.
Yes.
And how did the students accept it?
They thought it was great. In fact, I just ran into a former student last night, and he said, "Did you win again?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Great." He said, "My mom just called you a couple weeks ago," and he went on. And so they accepted it, and they cheered for me, and they would help me.
Loa, do you remember the next woman who was on council then?
I think that was Nancy Foreman.
Nancy Foreman, I believe
Yes.
it was.
Yes.
And she was on council for a year or two, wasn't
Yes.
I mean, a term or two.
Yes.
Also a very good person,
Yes.
very good councilwoman. I wish she would have stayed on, but she didn't. Then who came on after that as a female?
Let's see. I'm sorry. Here we go again.
Could that have
Blanking
been the person who took your place when you became council president? That she moved to Worcester?
I can't remember. It's there again, 61-year-old mind.
61 years, but you have a 20-year-old body. You have a 20-year-old.
No, I don't admit to that. I get
Just
tired.
Bob has a 20-year-old
Yeah, I'm
body.
on with a 20-year-old body.
Yeah.
Then after that, you became the council at large person. How did you decide to do that?
Well, I'd been off council for 5 years, and there again, a gentleman was going off that had been on council, and that's Gary Hawkinsmith. And so they appointed me to his position in 1990, and then asked me if I would run at large, and that's how I got.
And that's
to
what
be
you
at large.
did.
Yes.
You ran at large, and then you became council president too, did you not?
Oh, that was before that. Yes, I became council president once, and that was very difficult position to fill, I thought, because I had to work with all men, and they had their own ideas of leadership. But we finally worked it out, and it was one of the nicest experiences. But
So
when
you
I
were the
came
first
in-
female council president.
Yes,
We have had two since then,
yes,
Annette Palasek and Linda Carino. And, but you broke that ice there as well.
Yes.
So you broke the ice as the first person, first woman to be a council person, the first person to be the council president, first woman to be a council president. And you had that other great first, and that is that you started the alternative school in Wadsworth. And then the biggest great
well, actually, the school initiates the programs. We just have to
but
carry them out.
You were carrying them out.
Right.
And then the other biggest first was the fact that you're probably the first wife of any motorcycle racer winner in Wadsworth.
Yes, I
Is that
think
right?
so. Yes.
That's
Bob,
correct.
getting back to your motorcycles just for a couple of minutes here, because we want to get a couple of other things in here too about your children and also some other things that Loa is doing. But tell us the fastest that you've ever gone on a motorcycle, and then tell all of the kids that they shouldn't do that.
Okay, the fastest I ever went was in Idaho on in one of these contests, and I was up. The speedometer was showing 130 mile an hour. No, you shouldn't. I agree. You shouldn't go over the speed limit. I don't like to say that you should go out on the highway and ride these things fast.
Tell him what can happen in Idaho at 130
Oh,
miles an hour.
yeah. And I ran out of road while I was doing this at 130 mile an hour, and I kind of sheared off the side of the motorcycle before I got stopped in the field. But yeah, it can be very frightening. What you don't want to do is overextend yourself with the speed. I mean, you need training. You need to work up to the speed. And I don't like to say that speeding is the way to go. It's just I grew up with it, and it's part of my
Your whole
system.
psyche.
Yes,
But the important thing is that you went to school to learn
Yeah.
how to do that.
yes. I
You
learned-
just didn't go out and pick up a bike and start going.
No, no,
You went
I
to school to
took
learn how
some
to do
training
that.
on it, yes.
You also do it under the aegis of a professional organization.
Yes, right.
You just don't get out in the street and do that.
No,
So
no.
we don't want any of our kids to hear this story and
No,
just
no.
pick up a bicycle and go out there. Now, tell us a little bit more about your business, and then we need to go back to Loa and find out more about the school programs and also about your kids. So your business is still going, and
Yes, the business is still going. The business is changing. One of the interesting things now is Homer Fiskus, who used to have the Pontiac dealership in town. When I first started in business, he used to look at me and he'd start laughing. He'd say, "Gerberich, you're completely nuts to work on them automatic transmissions." He says, "There's got to be something wrong with you." Every time he'd see me. So
Why would he say that, do you think?
Because the automatic, he would not touch them. He said the automatic transmission was just no good. I mean,
No.
it just...
Now, this is Homer Fiscus.
Homer Fiscus.
He had the Pontiac agency on Obel Street.
Street, yes.
And he had a 1925 Buick that he used for a tow car.
Tow truck, yes.
And I'd love to have that car right now.
Yes, he, in fact, I had a tow truck for a while, and Homer used to tow things while I was, too. And anyways, now I can look back on Homer and think, now we've changed to electronics. We're now shifting the transmissions with electronics, computers, and now it's time that I have to learn new things that Homer said
having to learn
that wouldn't
then.
learn, yeah. So I look at things as a big challenge now in the automotive industry, that everything is electronics, and it's just completely different than it was at that time. But yet Homer at that time could seen things that were changing like I'm seeing it now. So,
And I'm sure that whoever is involved with electronics and transmissions today will maybe 15 or 20 or 30 years from now say, I don't want to learn this new technique, which is going to be atomic or whatever.
Yeah,
We have no idea what it's going to be.
Yeah.
And that's part of the evolutionary system that we
Yes.
have here. And that's why we have younger people coming in.
Right.
Too bad your chronology is 60 and your body is 20, because your body's going to outlive your chronology, and you're going to have a rough time there.
yeah, I'm on my way out. I mean, I'm on the checkout side, I figure now, and that's. But I don't want to. I still have the drive to learn the new things, the new automobile, the new technology, and I don't want to let that go by.
No, and you won't dare. Loa, getting back to the school issue once again here now, who were the principals that you worked for in the Wadsworth schools? Who were some of the teachers, and particularly those whose names we have not yet mentioned, with whom you worked here in Wadsworth? What we've been doing with everyone who comes into the program is to ask them what teachers they had. And over the period of the past 90 programs or so, we have probably picked up every teacher's name and a little bit about that teacher. Who were some of the ones that you worked with? And I'm sure that you're going to have many more, because you have a good memory, and you also are a little bit more recent in terms of your association with the Wadsworth schools.
Well, the first person that hired me was Mr. Burkholder, and he was the principal.
Maurice Burkholder. He was a superintendent, and
Yes,
we've had
and then
him.
became superintendent.
Right. And who else?
I was also, going way back when I first came in, Mr. Work was still living.
Mr. Work was still
And he
living.
remembered my father, said that he'd worn out a couple rubber hoses on my father,
Oh.
but I thought I'm very privileged that I
Yeah.
was able to talk to
O.J.
Mr. Work when I
Work is a legend in terms of his discipline. He's
Yes.
a good man.
Yes.
And he
Yes.
probably did wear out a couple rubber hoses.
And then Mr. Walters was also one of my principals. And
Dave Walters.
Went on to the,
Dave was on our program too.
Okay. And then Mr. Fix, of course, is a legend in our system.
Yes, and he was also on the program.
Yeah.
We had all of the retired administrators on one program.
Right.
And
Mr. Kuhn was also one of my superintendents.
and he's gone now.
Right.
Stanley Kuhn is gone
Yes.
now.
And then at the high school, Mr. Spakowski was one of my
Ben
principals.
Spakowski. Tell us a little bit about Ben. We have not had his name come up yet.
Oh, he was one of the most delightful coach people that I have ever, because he was a coach through and through, and that's the way he ran his staff also as a coach. And he encouraged, just one of the nicest gentlemen, so positive with the children.
He was. I remember I knew Ben on a professional basis. I didn't know him personally, but I knew him on a professional basis. And he took a young lad who was a failure all the way through school and encouraged him. That young lad right now is making close to $250,000 a year
Isn't that wonderful?
as a computer expert.
Oh, that
And
is
Ben's,
so
I wish
nice
Ben
to
were
hear.
here to hear that,
I do
because
too.
because
Yes.
Ben is dead, isn't he?
Yes, he
died.
is.
He died
Yes.
very early.
Yes, he did.
In life. That's
Yes.
unfortunate. And then who were some of the teachers with whom you worked?
Oh, I worked with Mrs. Looney. Was very close in the junior high.
Now, Mrs. Looney is the wife of John Looney,
Yes.
right? And we had
Yes.
John on the program not too long ago.
All right, good. And I worked with, of course, some of the ones that are now in the administration. Mr. Parsons was a teacher at one time.
And he's now the superintendent.
Now
And we
superintendent.
had him on the program.
Right, and let's see, we've had just so many that, and at the high school, I have to go with one of my favorites when I worked in the learning disabilities program under special education, and that was with Mike Winkler.
Mike
We
Winkler.
worked together very closely.
Okay,
for
that's a
5
new
years.
name that has come up now. And tell us a little bit about Mike Winkler.
Oh, Mike Winkler his folks are also go to the church at the what we call the Acme Lutheran Church. But I came by way of just because he was a learning disability. He was one of the most marvelous, patient people. And when I would get so frustrated with some of the antics that the children could have, he would just say, now back away, let's look at the program, let's look at our way of doing things, and let's come back and from another angle. Just so patient and encouraging to these young people at the high school. He also has been a coach. He told me he just retired in June. He has, well, compassion, just everything you want in a teacher.
Loa, do you remember any of the students that you had who became successful despite their disabilities?
If you mean successful in the way of making much money and
No,
being
I'm
in
talking about
computers,
successful.
No.
In
Successful meaning that they graduated,
That's right.
and that they now hold jobs and
That's
they
success.
are raising families. That to me is
That
success.
is success. I don't care
Being
how much
very
money they make.
supportive
That's
in-
right.
in the
Quickly,
Wadsworth
let's
area.
go to your daughter who is teaching, and she's perpetuating the legacy here in Wadsworth. Where is she teaching? And you say 10 years already? It's
Yes.
impossible to believe
Yes.
that a young kid could be that far along. She has only 20 more years to go and she can retire. Can't believe that. But tell us about her.
Okay, Susan just took to teaching from the time that she would come into the school with me after school and look around at the classroom, at the things that I was doing, always interested. And then she became a teacher's aide at the high school. And then you were very encouraging to her when she went to the University of Akron. And when she graduated, she wasn't sure if she could get a job in her hometown, but she did, and Mr. Parsons hired her, and she's been at Valley View, and you can tell I'm a mom. I think she's a marvelous teacher.
And I'm
from
sure
where
she
I
is.
watch.
We've heard
Yes.
nothing but good comments
Yes.
about her. Bob, quickly, we're going to run out of time again. In terms of the motorcycle racing,
Yeah.
when do you think that you're going to have to, when do you think that your 20-year-old body won't be able to handle this anymore?
Well, I'm sure I got another 5 years.
5 more years.
5 more years without any trouble at all, and
Does your association have an age limit?
no.
And
no.
what are the only criteria for riding?
The only
Or
criteria...
racing, I should say, not
Racing
riding.
is I have to have a physical to be able to race up Pikes Peak.
And is the physical a stringent one, or is one of those, if you have a 98.6 temperature, you're in?
Yeah, the doctor puts his hand on my forehead. He doesn't even have to use a thermometer. So no, I have to have a cardiogram every year for that. That and in the Bonneville salt flats I do. But the rest of it is as long as I'm steady and don't shake, well, I'm okay.
Okay, now then, we're joking about the 20-year-old body, but we aren't really joking about it.
No.
How much strength do you have to propel that big motorcycle that you have? You have to be extremely strong. do you
Yes,
not?
yes, I do exercises and I take vitamins every day and I think young.
You think
I
young.
I always think young.
And you think you can do for 5 more years?
Racing, yes, I
Racing,
probably
5 more years.
yeah.
Now, what is the longest trip that you have taken on a motorcycle without getting off?
The longest, you mean one setting?
Yes,
Yes, I've ridden 1,000 miles.
without getting off.
No, just for fuel.
Okay.
You have to get fuel every 150 miles.
Oh, I see. They don't have a very big
No,
fuel tank.
no.
So, but that's the only thing that you got off for.
Yes.
And how long did it take you to go that 100 or 1,000 miles?
Well, I averaged 60 miles an hour.
Oh, really?
Yes.
And you were not going over the speed limit, of course?
No, I never go over the speed limit. No.
Absolutely not.
No.
Bob and Loa, our time is up. These hours go by so quickly, it's almost impossible to believe that we have already been talking to you
Yes.
for an hour. But in the meantime, we need to say that there have been some extraordinary legacies that you're leaving Wadsworth. You're not old enough to remember the histories of Wadsworth, as some of the older ones, 80, 90 years old, 97 our oldest one. But you do have something that you're going to be able to contribute toward Wadsworth. Bob, with your motorcycle and 20-year-old body,
Yeah.
no one has been able to do that yet. And if anyone has been able to do it, I'm sure I'll get a phone call tonight as soon as this program is aired. And Loa, your legacy of having helped so many students, particularly, and having led the city of Wadsworth so gloriously well through your political association, gives the Gerberich family an outstanding mark, and I think we're going to say A+. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.